Morning, councillors. My name is Councillor Karen Murphy and I'm your Governance Chair. Today I would like to acknowledge first the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to the City Governance Committee meeting for the 11th of October. I declare the meeting open at 11:45 a.m. I would like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. In item 3, attendance and leave of absence. We don't have any leave of absence, although Councillor Jeremiah is currently not in the room. I do know that he is here somewhere. And Councillor Bradley is leaving around the 12 o'clock, that's correct. And I believe Councillor Bannon has a very important meeting at 2 o'clock. So we're going to be changing the agenda around a little bit today. So please bear with us. And Councillor Russell is currently out of the room. So I'm hoping that they'll be back shortly. So we will be moving on to the agenda items. And as I noted, we will be bringing up item 5.9 first, due to some councillors leaving early from this meeting, and I believe Silvio's not feeling the best today, so we'll try to get this agenda item done first. It is a confidential report. So it is the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program Phase 4. Can I welcome into the discussion the Acting Manager of the Office of CEO, Rebecca Smith. I do note that this item 5.9 is confidential. Rebecca, did you need to just speak first?
Thank you, Councillor. We can speak generalistically about the report without going into confidential if councillors don't wish to. We are here to present the listing for the endorsement of grant funding for the LRCI4 project, and Silvio is here as a subject matter expert should councillors have specific questions.
Thank you. I might just put it through to the councillors now. I note that item 5.9 is confidential. A proposed resolution to move this matter is displayed on the screen. Do any councillors wish to move us into closed session? Councillor Wilcox has raised her hand as the mover. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Russell has seconded. Could I, by a way of show of hands, see all those in favour, please, to move into confidential? That has been carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Audio Man up the back, we are now in... and then do the conflicts of interest and then go back in. Is that okay? Can Councillor Lane is going to move us out. Is a seconder? Is Councillor Steve? Thank you. We're back in live meeting. My apologies to the members of the public. I just omitted the section where we asked for declarations of conflict of interest. So we're just going back and then stepping back into that report. So I now refer to the declarations of conflicts of interest. Do any councillors wish to declare a conflict of interest for any reports for today's agenda? There being none, we will now move back onto the report. So, girls, if you're playing along, we're just going to take item 5.9 back into confidential. Can I have a mover for that again? Councillor Wilcox, seconder please. Councillor Russell, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. session now is live streaming started. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for your debate today with regards to that. Very shortly we'll be putting up a motion on the board for the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program Phase 4. Do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Bannon has moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Raven has seconded the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried with the exception of Councillor Wilcox. How do you vote?
Against, and I'd like to provide a reason.
Sure. Just bear with us for a second. We're good to go? Yep, go.
Okay. I agree with
Point of order,
Beanley.
Madam Chair, could I, forgive me for being rude, but if the councillor votes against, I don't believe that we actually give a reason. But if the councillor abstains, she has the opportunity to provide a reason.
Thank you, Councillor Kransky. Robert has just been in my ear about the same thing. Do you wish to abstain or against?
I'll go abstain then, so I can provide a reason, please.
Thank you.
All right, okay. I agree with Beanley Road being on the list. However, I don't agree with Ann Street because it has not formed part of a previous conversation or allowed us to advocate for the funding previously. I don't believe councillors have been given all of the information to make an informed decision on projects because as councillors we have not been provided with an updated LRCI list of projects where proposed project 2 and 3 were part of the original list.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcox. That is noted. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for changing that timing of that report. Thank you. Councillors, before they go, does anybody have any questions for them, general business? Oh, Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much. Can I please ask whether a list of projects that we've discussed previously can be distributed to councillors along with ones that have been completed and ones that are still to be considered? Thank you.
Thank you. Have you got any for us?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Can I just add,
Yes, Councillor.
can we please have an updated LRCI list of projects that have been discussed with ELT with these projects on it so that we can see what's actually being discussed because we don't have an updated list since 2021.
LRCI or the SOI roads,
The LRCI.
which is the same one you want? Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Kransky.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to be a pain, but could I just ask something of the officers, perhaps Robert? Robert, in the actual general report, do we actually mention the names of the projects in the open report, or are they only mentioned in the confidential component?
I think, Beck, I think they're only mentioned in the confidential report.
No, they are listed, 1, 2 and 3, under 6 discussion.
In open though,
No.
not just in
Oh, sorry, no.
confidential?
So now the resolutions are...
The reason for the question is that a councillor gave a reason for not supporting the report, but I'm wondering if those projects are actually in confidential.
Good question, Councillor Kransky, but the motion, the name of the projects were actually in the motion. And I was guided to do so.
That's fine, I just wanted advice. It's all fine, Robert? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Run, quick, go. Thank you, councillors. We had heavy debate with regards to that report, but now we'll be moving back to the normal agenda. So the next report will be 5.1. Could I ask, please, the Corporate Governance Manager, Miss Anita White, to enter into discussions? So report 5.1 is the suburb boundary change proposal, Carabat and Yarrabilba. Miss Anita White, would you like to enter discussions?
Thank you, and through the chair, good afternoon, councillors. The report today is a report presenting a proposed boundary change proposal. Can I emphasise that we are not the decision maker here? We've simply been asked to provide views. This relates to, as I understand it, Yarrabilba is currently 2 suburbs and has been since 2012. At that time, the developer of Yarrabilba requested that there be two suburbs, one Yarrabilba and one Upper Yarrabilba. That was considered by council at the time, and the divisional councillor at that time did not support the naming of Upper Yarrabilba, but instead chose, in consultation with the Yugambeh Language Centre, the name Cairaba, which I understand means the place of the white cockatoo. That then was the proposal that went from council back to the DNRM as an alternate and was ultimately accepted by the department. With the benefit of 10 years, it appears that the developer now sees that the concept or the proposal to have the two suburbs is not working for the community, and they're proposing that there simply be now one suburb called Yarrabilba. We've had some discussions internally with our plan ceiling team who don't see any issues with this, and I would say that Yarrabilba is itself a First Nations name. As I said, if council does support this, it would simply be to provide in principle support to the fact that there would just be one suburb of Yarrabilba and no longer a suburb of Cairaba. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Anita. Any questions from the councillors at all? Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much to you, Madam Chair. Obviously, removing place of the white cockatoo for place of song is not a bad thing, both First Nations names, and I have no issue with that. My question is, were the Logan Elders asked the question as part of this report? Did we consult with the Logan Elders at all on this change and this removal of a First Nations name?
So, councillor, thank you for that question. I believe we are just one stakeholder, and the obligation to consult actually lies with the state under the Place Names Act. So I would, and the record keeping I've seen from previous is they do that engagement, not us.
I understand that, but from our perspective, we had a First Nations cultural officer. We haven't had one in 8 months, and we didn't go to the local elders, which is 20 metres that way, to ask their view on it. Even though it's not our decision, out of courtesy, I would imagine that we would start consulting with our Logan Elders on decisions like this going forward. So I just would like that to be noted if possible.
Councillor, I'm happy to take that feedback.
Thank you, councillors. Is there any further questions? Is there a mover? Councillor Karansky has moved the motion. Councillor Bradley has seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. That has been carried by Councillor Haramai. How do you vote?
Abstain.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anita, I think we're moving on to item 5.2, which is the Council of CEOs delegations. Could you please enter the discussions? Thank you.
And thank you through the chair. This report relates to some legislative changes that have occurred at the state level relating to 3 separate pieces of legislation as listed on page 63 of your agenda. This doesn't propose any new delegations. It's simply a lift and shift from one piece of legislation to the new. So to keep our delegations current, which we're trying very hard to do, we're proposing these be, the existing delegations be with repealed, finding the word repealed, and replaced with new under the new legislation. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Happy to move it, Councillor Bradley, but is there any questions first? No? Councillor Bradley has moved the motion. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Raven. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. I believe Councillor Bannon is just out of the room at the moment. Okay, councillors, does anybody have any general business for the Corporate Governance Manager at all? No? Do you have any for us?
Just a quick one, if I may. Councillors, you'd be aware that the Queensland Government is proposing amendments to the Local Government Act and regulations, particularly in respect to councillor conduct and the Office of the Independent Assessor. The draft bill has been released and is currently before the Parliamentary Committee. I think you would have been provided with a copy of the submission that the organisation made in respect of those. We have been advised that it is likely that the changes, once they're passed by Parliament, will go live, which means that we're going to have to go through an educational training program with you possibly before end of year, early next year when these come. So I just wanted you to know that we are aware of it, and we will be getting that information to you just as soon as we can.
Yes, Councillor Lane.
Thanks. As a councillor with a significant number of complaints that have been dismissed against her, I'm glad that this changes will be coming through, and hopefully we actually see a reduction overall in the number of frivolous complaints that are coming to the OIA. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Is there any further questions at all? Thank you. You have a great day. Thank you. Councillors, we're moving on to item 5.3, which is the policy repeal, workplace bullying, sexual harassment and anti-discrimination. I believe I've got Mr. Jeff Watts to enter into the discussion. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the Chair, may I introduce Ms Belinda Walker, who's the Acting Workforce Relation Program Leader. Today, we present to Council's City Governance Committee a proposed repeal of Council's current workplace bullying, harassment and anti-discrimination policy. The repeal of this policy relates to changes to the Commonwealth Sex Discrimination Act, which created the requirement for Council to review our policy. The People and Culture Branch has consulted with Council's Corporate Governance and Legal Services branches to undertake this review. It was determined the updated content that would form a new policy was operational in nature and recommended that the policy would best serve Council as an updated management directive. A copy of the updated management directive titled Prevention of Workplace Bullying, Sexual Harassment and Unlawful Discrimination is attached to this committee report. Council's executive leadership team have endorsed this approach, and if Council endorse repealing the current policy, the updated management directive will take effect. The Legal Services team briefed councillors on the changes and application of the legislation to council workplaces on the 7th of September 2023. I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you. I have Councillor Lane and then Councillor Rabin.
Thanks. I'm confused by this report coming forward. So the Feds introduced new act, and we have to comply. How is our policy different to the Act? Is there any additional information in our policy that's not covered in the Act, or is there any less, or what is the scope? Why are we seeing this? Because I think this would be operational rather than us.
Thank you, Councillor. It is operational, and that's why we're suggesting that it is repealed as a policy, because currently it sits as a policy, and hence we're asking for it to be repealed for the operational nature of the management directive. The legal team came and briefed the councillors in a session, I think it was in September. Yes, about the changes. So it's changing from a reactive approach to a proactive approach, and amending and changing policies is one action that employers can take to demonstrate that they're doing that.
I understand that. This new, so we're just following the Act, we're not putting any additional wording or clauses or things in to Council as a result of this?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Yes, we're following the requirements of the Act as it applies to Council.
Thank you. Councillor Rabin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my code of conduct binds me to follow all council policies. Does that apply to management directives?
No.
So does that mean I no longer have to follow workplace bullying, sexual harassment and anti-discrimination procedures?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Raven. The legislation applies to all workplaces, so the legislation still applies to councillors.
Even if we don't have a policy?
That's correct,
Cool.
Councillor.
Thank you.
Bit cheeky there, Councillor Raven. Yeah. Councillor Harrimeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question's for the council officers. My understanding is currently there's a council policy that explicitly includes councillors as subject to it. This policy is proposed to be repealed and a management directive introduced that applies to employees, which councillors are not, and people leaders, which seems to be undefined. It is apparent that management directives don't apply to councillors. Is it correct in saying that if this resolution passes and is ratified at Ordinary Council, Council has repealed the workplace bullying, harassment and anti-discrimination policy, and there is no policy that applies to councillors regarding this?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Jeremiah. That is correct. However, the legislation still applies to councillors.
My understanding of the legislation is that it sets out a number of items. Does the management directive set a higher standard than the legislation, or is it exactly the same as the legislation?
Thank you for the question. The management directive cites the legislation. However, we will be doing things to over and above the management directive to ensure that we're taking positive steps, as is required in the legislation, to ensure that we are eliminating, as far as reasonably practicable, all the unlawful discrimination, sexual harassment, and so on and so forth.
Thank you for that. So there's a management directive and associated actions that not only achieves the bar of legislation, but actually goes above and beyond.
We'll aim to, but the legislation is it's high anyway, which is to be proactive and to eliminate, which is a very high bar already, but we're definitely going to be aiming for that, yeah.
That makes sense. So if the management directive and council has an intent to go above and beyond legislation, yet councillors are held to the standard of legislation, it appears that there's a two-tier system and councillors are not being upheld to the same standard as employees. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I think the we are trying as much as we can, and we'll be doing everything in our power to ensure that we're keeping up with the legislation, which is to eliminate as far as practically possible. And so that's what we're aiming for. So sorry if I was unclear, but it would be in alignment with legislation. The legislation applies to councillors and all workers, and so it's not of a different standard, it's the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeremiah. Are there any further questions, councillors? We will bring up the motion on the board. Do I have a mover for the motion that is currently displayed? Mayor Power has moved it. Any seconders? Councillor Hall has seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Does any councillors have any general business for the People and Culture Manager at all? No? Do you have any for us?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. We will now move on to a confidential report with the Corporate Properties Manager, Brett McGrath. Is Brett around at all? Oh yes, he's just coming in. I'm just about to ask. So we've got a confidential proposed port for the lease of council land in Loganholme for telecommunication purposes. Do any councillors wish to move this into a confidential session? No, there being none, I hand it over to you, Brett.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy, and through the chair. Nothing to report here. It's pretty straightforward for us to enter into a new lease.
Thank you. That was awesome. Councillor Bradley has suggested it should move it. Councillor Bannon has seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That has been carried unanimously. That's how you do it, Brad. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any general business for the Corporate Property Manager today? No? There being none, do you have any for us?
None from me, thank you.
That was really easy. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great report. Okay, councillors, we're moving on to item 5.5, the update and the amendment of the 2023-2024 annual contract plan. Could Miss Carolyn Bugg, if she's around? She's coming. Hello, Miss Bugg. We're moving through this quite quickly, which is awesome. We're up to 5.5, the update of the amendment to 2023-2024 annual contract planning. Ms. Bugg, would you please enter into the discussions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. This report provides council with an update of the adopted annual contracting plan and seeks the changes in the plan to be adopted. 3 adjustments to the annual plan in Table 1. They're the recycling stockpile materials. The market analysis is in progress during the first quarter of the year and is proposed that this will go to market in the second quarter. Transaction advisory services. This is adjusted to go to market in the third quarter, and also the project management services. This is actually contingent on the advisory services, so that'll be moved to 24-25. The second table in the report reflects the progress of tenders for the disposal of interest in land and have been resolved through council invite written tenders, beg your pardon. Also refer to the local supplier information, which is in figure 1 of the report. Council has spent, so this is to the end of August, Council has spent approximately $112 million, with $48.5 million of this with local businesses and local benefit businesses. So that's around the 43% of the total spend. Approximately 25% of medium to high value sourcing contracts were awarded to local suppliers or local businesses on panel arrangements, and 16% of tender responses were from local businesses. In relation to the low value sourcing, there are 96 requests for quotes, 16 local suppliers were invited to quote, so approximately 40% of the total value of requests for quote were awarded to the local suppliers. Table 3 provides information on the additions to the annual contract plan, and we are looking for this report to be adopted. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, councillors. Any questions? Councillor Herrenmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 116 of the overall agenda, it updates the 23 to 24 annual contracting plan, contains a table that outlines different tenders that are going to be listed. One of the tenders is the provision of engineering and consultancy services. Do those services include architectural services?
Through the chair, don't believe so.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Herrenmeyer? Councillors, any further questions? There is a motion, Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much. In Table 3 on page 119, printing and mailing of rate and water notices, animal registration documents, addition to contract plan. What exactly is that, Carolyn? Is that us going away from Australia Post, or is that something different?
Through the chair, that tender is actually the equivalent of the mailing house for our rates notices to be mailed from, so that we prepare a file for all of the rates notices, but we don't print those rate notices, so we send that off to the printing house. So that's for that piece of work.
Thank you.
No further questions? Councillor Bradley has moved the motion that is currently on the board. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Raven has seconded it. All the, please show of hands if you're in support of this motion. Thank you. That has been carried unanimously, noting that Mayor Power is out of the room at the current moment. Thank you. We are now moving on to item 5.6, the financial performance report for July 2023. Ms. Carolyn Bugg, could you please enter discussions?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just highlight a couple of points in the report, noting that the risk for council, we have added the El Nino increasing risks of heatwaves and bushfires over the coming months, noting that working in hotter conditions than normal will be needed to be considered by those working outdoors. We've also noted that the flooding risk remains at normal levels even in the El Nino. Also noted that the inflationary pressures have eased for the month of August. However, it is probably too early to see a trend in that particular area. Inflation is still above the general increases that were considered when we were developing the budget for the current year. The current operating position to the end of August was 10.85 million surplus. This is predominantly driven by operating revenue that is being higher than budget. We'll note that water charges are higher than budget, or continue to be higher than budget. However, this revenue is offset by bulk water costs. Private works revenue is also above budget and again is offset by expenses. And we also received approximately $1 million, or actually $1 million, for the Logan Digital Infrastructure and Connectivity Program. This is a one-off revenue amount, and it wasn't considered in the budget for August. The materials and services budget variance. So I noted that the bulk water and private works are offset by expenditure. That's in that materials and services. Although it seems to be running at budget, that's due to the fact that digital transformation projects are being placed, or not on hold, but deferred while there's an outcome of a new business case. So that's actually understating those expenses somewhat. We continue to keep an eye on the hardship arrangements and noted a movement of 25 more arrangements in August from July. However, as I've stated before, the positive in that space is that the average debt continues to reduce. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Caroline. I've got Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much to you, Madam Chair. Carolyn, as part of the report, unspent monies in the branches, we've just heard that one of our areas is overwhelmed with the volume of work. Is that accounted for in this report, as in monies unspent or monies unallocated? Or are they allocated and not planned to be spent in this financial year? Is that included in this report?
All funds budgeted are in this report. So the variance to budget would reflect whether the amounts are being spent or not. Not quite sure what
No, it's okay.
it's in reference to.
Yeah, it's fine. Thanks.
Councillor Jeremiah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a financial report. I have a question. How much debt is council currently in?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I can definitely get back to you. We borrow money at the end of June each financial year, so I could get that figure for you at the end of June.
Thank you. Is any of that debt unsecured?
Unsecured? Yeah, I would say that the majority of it is unsecured.
Thank you. What's the average interest rate on that debt?
At the moment, fixed rate is 5%. Wouldn't be the average because we have borrowings that go back prior to June.
And borrowings prior to June, I presume, would have a lower interest rate?
Correct.
So 5% is probably, it seems, on the high end of our interest rates. The average will be a bit lower than that. What interest does council charge on overdue rates?
Council charges the interest rate that is gazetted each year, and that is approximately 9.8%, I believe.
Thank you. So council can borrow and has an average interest rate on our unsecured borrowings of less than 5%, yet we charge more than 9% on unpaid debts, which is an unsecured debt. Thank you.
Is there any further questions? Councillor Bradley is happy to move the report. Is there a seconder for the report? Councillor Stamp has seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried with the exception of, is that Councillor Lane?
Just abstain, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to the next report, which is item 5.7, Local Infrastructure Programs, August 2023. Caroline, please enter discussions.
Thank you, Chair. The report for October contains our usual attachments, so I'll just go through those. Attachment 1, there are 21 new projects for October that fall within the LIP guidelines and are recommended to be endorsed. Attachment 2 reflects material adjustments of 2 projects. This month we've also included a third attachment. The third attachment reflects a project that is presented for special consideration as it falls outside of the adopted LIP guidelines and is therefore not recommended to be endorsed. The project is for CCTV cameras which are not fixed either to a building or a pole and therefore by their nature are portable. The guidelines state that portable items do not fit within the requirements and as such we can't recommend this project for approval. Of course, it is for Council to decide whether to approve the project under special consideration for the LIP program of works. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Carolyn. Councillor Lane, I know that this project in item 3 is under yours, so please proceed if you wish to.
Thanks very much. Through you, Madam Chair. I disagree with the sentiment of CCTV cameras not being a infrastructure item. I think that having them that can roam around the community to hotspots is actually essential. I think that putting a public art mural on a state government-owned property is not a good use of council funding if we're looking at infrastructure delivery. But that being said, I'll support it because it makes the area look pretty. So I'd like to see this actually get up. I'd like to put it to my colleagues if there's an alternate motion that can be put forward that actually includes LIP number 00601. My community is seeing a rash of issues over the last couple of years, and they're actually escalating to the point that my streets are paved with burnt rubber, and the local forest was broken into, animals were chased at night, and the use of those covert cameras are essential to the wellbeing of my residents. So I'd love to see it be amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. We have done an amended motion. This is the motion that has come from the governance team. Can you please have a look at it? Me personally, I think we should just not be deferring it, which is required in this particular motion. I just think we need to change the first motion from be not approved to be approved. Councillor Stamp, I do know that you want to ask a question, but can I just clarify with regards to this motion, Anita, if that can happen as well? So it's the first motion, but with... No, she wants to get this going. Yes, so take out 3 altogether. So I was thinking I was doing as changing that to approve.
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Murphy, while they're deliberating, can we ask a question of Councillor Lane, please?
Firstly, I'll just go to Councillor Stamp because she had put her hand up. Go, Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Lane, what do these actually look like, these cameras? How are they secured? Where are they stored? Like, I'm just trying to think what they look like.
So a good example of a covert camera was, one was placed in an area of high illegal dumping. It was placed on a public item, i.e. a tree, and during the course of that, illegal dumping was found to have occurred. We had prosecutions out of it, but we also had prosecutions for hooning offences that occurred on that camera as well. So the use of them is very important, and in a community that is nightly being woken to the dulcet tones of burnouts, yeah, we need them.
So how are they secured and how are they installed? Who would install them or put
Well,
them in place?
our actual CCTV team have that process already underway. They actually approved these cameras. It was the finance branch that hasn't approved them. So, yeah, they believe that they're an asset to the community and are already using them. I don't know how they secure them. I don't know how they put them up.
But they would be kept with council, like
they're kept with council.
They're not in community centres or they're nothing like that.
No.
They're just purely being
So
kept
where
with council.
hotspots occur, they actually put them into, and they'll be Division 2 specific. They've got citywide at the moment, and it's not enough. So
I understand.
if something's happening in Division 10, they deploy them to Division 10. If I have a major outbreak of troubles, I can't get a covert camera into my division because it's already pre-allocated to another division. So trying to circumvent that by actually getting Division 2 assets put in only for Division 2 out of local infrastructure program, and I think my ratepayers would see that as a good spend. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. The reason why you can't get the cameras is because they're all down the back of Eagleby. I have... Sorry. Yeah, they're dumping. Councillor Wilcox, then Councillor Kransky, then Councillor Hermione. So, you're good, sorry. And councillor Bradley, I'll add you to the list, sorry. So we're down to councillor Kerensky.
Okay, it might be actually a question for the safety crew as opposed to Carolyn. So is it possible through you, Madam Chair, that we invite the
Yes,
safety team
please,
to come down?
Emily and Keely, are you there? We preempted that we may need them today, so if we could bring them to the table, that would be great. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, if councillors support this today, there's often requests coming to you guys for covert cameras, and we do share them across the city. My concern is that, okay, suddenly you'll be inundated with requests like this one. How are you going to manage this within your officer pool?
Through the chair, so resourcing is definitely a consideration for the covert camera deployment. So currently we are resourcing 2 within our team, and that's just for community safety purposes. We have outlined and done a little bit of work around what that would look like for our resourcing. So certainly if we were to look at an influx across the city, we currently have 1 officer doing it, which is doable with 2 cameras currently, but we certainly would need to look at that if we were needing to deploy a number every week to service the whole city, or more than what we're currently doing. We certainly would need to have a look at our resourcing to deliver that.
Because that's, for me, the bigger consideration here. I really appreciate what the council is trying to achieve. I have certain hotspots which shall remain nameless today in my area where this could be well received by the local residents. They would love to see that. I just can't see how you can have the resources to provide the service. That's my worry, and I was surprised to see this come up as special consideration rather than as a report or something like that to council. So I'd like to support it. I just don't think they can do it.
Councillor Lane, I'll let you rebut.
How many cameras do you currently have, covert cameras do you currently have that those 2 people are servicing?
2, through the chair, sorry, 2 covert cameras currently, with the notion that the additional 5 that we're requesting through Councillor Lane, that would be able to be serviced within our branch. So some would be allocated for a legal dumping team as well as community safety team. So we felt comfortable that our resourcing would be able to support this request, but moving forward, if anything above and beyond that were to come through, that we would absolutely need to look at our resourcing.
So 2 people, 2 cameras, over-resourced if you get more than 7, and if they're not moving every other day, then I'm curious about that. How can they not cope with the capacity on that? I'm just curious. I'm not accusing, I'm just asking that question.
Through the chair, if I may respond, Councillor Lane, we see a great deal of success in covert surveillance technology. We have seen some success in illegal dumping, as you'd be aware. We have a large branch and a large pool of resources to tap into, as Keely suggests. So while we do have 2 officers in the community safety program, we also have a broader branch of officers as well. But certainly this branch is intending to do some more work in the space of covert surveillance, particularly as the technology improves and as our safety camera network improves with the sort of continuation in technology. There's a piece of work we want to do with councillors, but at this point in time we're unable to make this decision today, so hence why this has come through the special consideration process.
Thanks. Just one more on that. So prior to this, we actually went through the process of whether or not we could actually co-locate with Queensland Police Service, because Queensland Police has covert cameras, and I was prepared back in 2021 to look at whether or not we could fund those, and that went by the wayside. So 2 years later, we're sitting here talking about 5 cameras, and we're worried about what's going to happen down the track with 2 staff, 2 cameras currently in place. That'll make 7. And if other councillors come on board and want to do that, is there any way that you can still liaise with QPS to take some of the strain off when we do put these up? Because they're obviously generated as a result of QPS complaints. They're not just a councillor saying, can you chuck one up in Park Ridge Road, or can you chuck one up in Dewars Road? It's actually as a result of QPS complaints, so we can actually gather the data and get QPS actually doing prosecutions. So is that possible? after this one is approved today?
Through the chair, absolutely. So we do have great partnership with QPS, as you say, and we have done deployments with them in the past where they have come out and assisted us. So absolutely, we could continue to have that conversation.
Thank you. Before I go on any further, I've read the sentiment of the room, and what we intend to do first is to put up the original motion first to see whether that gets passed. Then if that doesn't, then we'll put up the amended motion that Councillor Lane has requested, and then we'll go from there. So then I have Councillor Herrenmeyer, Councillor Bradley, and then Councillor Stamp. Councillor Herrenmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of my time was to confirm that we're putting up the original motion. If that doesn't get up, then we'll vote on the amended one. I'm not sure why all that time was taken to draft the amended motion when we could have just voted on the original and had a discussion. So I'm glad that this, well, I'm actually speaking, I'm glad that the precedent is being followed of original motions going up from the expert council officers, us voting on it, doesn't get up, then we vote on an amended. I think that's a good precedent, and I'm glad we're following it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Herrenmeyer. In light of today and with discussion as the chair with Councillor Lane prior to this meeting, we already had an amended motion already set. However, it changed while we were in this room. That's why it took a little time to just re-amend that motion. But reading the room, we'll put up the original motion first. If it doesn't get passed, then we'll be putting up Councillor Lane's preferred motion. I have Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. Through the chair. This question is to the staff because I actually like this idea for Division 1 as well. So if this gets up, the covert CCTV cameras, like how many, like it's 5 for 5,000, does that equate if I get 2, it's for 2,000? Is it similar sort of costing?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. I guess we deal with this matter in an isolated manner, but as I foreshadowed, there's some work for this branch to do around covert surveillance generally to make sure that we're fully resourced to support the city across all divisions.
Yeah, I would dearly love to do the same. So thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Kransky, have I missed you somewhere along the line?
It's all good, Madam Chair. I hadn't finished my train of thought, but that's okay.
I do apologise. Could you please be brief? And then I have Councillor Stamp and then Councillor Hall.
Absolutely. So my concern is I support what the councillor wants to do. I can just see that you're about to be inundated. So my next question is fantastic. I'll put up Division 4 also to have several covert cameras, and I'm also happy to fund them. So I would say, councillors, if you're prepared to support this today, then be prepared to support this across the city and be prepared to provide them with resourcing to enable them to do it. Like, that's the challenge you've got here. So if this gets up today, I'll be asking these guys to send me up a lip form, and you'll see this next month coming from me. Okay, so I'm just being really clear that you're actually we are potentially setting them up to fail.
So, Councillor Kransky, we are going to put up the two motions. The first motion is that we don't approve it, and then the second motion will be, if that's not passed, then that we will approve it. So it depends on how people vote. So, are you happy with that? To test the floor?
You're the chair, Madam Chair. I'd have my concerns if it gets up because we're out of budget cycle, and how are they going to manage these requests?
Thank you. Councillor Hall, I have got you down, but Councillor Stamps first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the confusion here is that when we look to, say, do a tree planting event, there's an element of maintenance included in that for, say, 12 months. When we put in the speed advisory signs, there's an element of, okay, this enables, there's also a cost element for when these are moved around, you know, for, say, the next 12 months. And then we look at, from a budget point of view, okay, if we've got more of these in the system, we need more resources. So what I'm trying to understand, that's why I was kind of understanding whether these were being moved by, you know, community groups or Councillor Lane, or who was actually managing this. Because if it is surely if it's a council resource we're using, it has to be included as part of the LIP amount, in my mind, for a certain period of time of maintenance, I would have expected, based on what we do in other LIP projects.
Ladies, would you like to enter that discussion. Is there any form of maintenance allowed in that funding?
Through the chair, no, not currently.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I'm not super on board with the covert camera thing. It seems a bit sneaky. Have we looked at possibly doing, stepping ahead and investigating other technologies? Like drone technology seems to be going quite well at the moment, and perhaps there's an avenue there as a better surveillance mechanism to step up and head towards the future for something like that. It's just that, these covert cameras set out everywhere. I don't get a great vibe from it. I prefer to know where a camera is if I'm going under it, if I can see it. That's just how I feel on it.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Raven, then Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So infrastructure indicates that it's fixed to something. This is equipment, not infrastructure. If we can approve this through LIP, and the policy needs work, if councillors can override the policy to this point, I'd like to appoint some security guards to sit at one of my facilities because they're getting broken into on a daily basis. They already have cameras, they don't work. So let's use LIP to fund security guards, and then let's use LIP to do all sorts of service enhancements through a LIP program, which then councillors, I guarantee you the next step is you ask for more LIP because you're using it for purposes that aren't infrastructure, and it cascades in. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a service enhancement to be considered during budget and a city-wide program, not something that you do through an infrastructure program and use it to buy equipment.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. Through the week, you ladies know that I did ask pretty much the exact same thing. For my area, I have consistent dumping area, and one of the cameras is out there at the moment, and it's actually getting some good data, and we're finding a few people and that sort of thing. I'm just wondering though, because I actually was in a conversation with another officer the other day, and a LIP project came up that I'd funded, and he said, hey, this is the unintended, and I was like, oh, that's an unintended consequence that I hadn't thought of on a branch in particular. I'm assuming the cost for the cameras, as you said, is purely for the cameras and not for maintenance. Should this have more funding attached to it? Sorry, Councillor Lane. More funding attached to it so that there is a maintenance cost on it for in the future, so that then, yes, when we're all actually wanting to do it, we're not just funding the cost of the camera, but we're actually funding the cost for at least 12 months so that someone can be allocated to move it around the area, get the data off it, stuff like that. So I'm wondering if that is more for this special consideration.
Ladies, I think we have sort of covered that with there was no cost added, but is it something that you can do?
Through the chair, because this is the first of its nature, this matter, and it's not a decision for which council officers can make. It's a council decision. We approached it on the basis that these cameras were fairly low value assets, and I understand that they'd be covered by council's insurance policies. So in the they've got fairly low maintenance requirements, unlike other sort of more fixed infrastructure we have in the city. So in the event of theft or damage, I understand they'd be covered by council's insurance policies. I think that's why we haven't built any maintenance into the cost. But as I said, it's the first request that's come up of this nature, so happy to consider anything.
Thank you, ladies. I'm going to wrap up with Councillor Lane and then we'll go to the vote. We'll put the first motion that is in the report up on the screen, which should be up on the screen right now. Councillor Lane.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair, through you. I've been trying to work on community safety for a long time, and I'm really appreciative of the support that the community safety team and city standards team have given me. We can't afford $100,000 for every camera that we're putting in now. That's just too expensive. This is an alternate option of infrastructure that will go in, that will help actually catch crime or actually allow police to gather data to prevent crime in my division. I would love it if it got up. If it doesn't, is it the end of the world? No. But I'll go back to my residents and I'll let them know that I can't afford to put $100,000 cameras all across my division. It's just not possible. It's not feasible anymore. We had them at 50 grand in February and they're at 100 grand now. It's just not doable. So this is a cheaper, alternate option, and I appreciate that it takes staff to do it. If you want to write that into it, so be it, but yeah, it's a difficult one, and I understand where councillors are coming from. They're concerned about, they want them as well as soon as possible. So if we write this in, we write it in. If we don't, I'll just go back to my residents and say, lock them up, just lock up. That's it, and carry a brick.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillors, I have a motion up on the board, which is the original motion. Just noting point 3, where it says that the LIP number 601, as detailed in the attachment 3 of this report for the local infrastructure program, October 2023, not be approved. So this is the original motion. So do I have a mover for the motion? Councillor Hall has moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Russell has seconded it. By way of show of hands, all those in favour of this, please raise your hands. So we'll go around the room, please, just for the audio recording and for the girls. So Mayor Power, how do you vote? Councillor Brandley has left the meeting. Councillor Lane?
Against.
Councillor Russell?
For.
Councillor Kransky?
For.
Councillor Raven?
For.
Councillor Hall?
For.
Councillor Fraser?
Against.
Councillor Jeremiah?
For.
Bannon?
Against.
Councillor Stamp?
I'd like to abstain, Madam Chair, and provide a reason, please.
Yes, thank you.
It's because I believe the actual project itself would be great, but I believe an element of cost should be included in there to move the actual cameras around. So that's my position.
Councillor Wilcox?
I would like to abstain and provide a reason as well, please.
Go ahead.
I agree. I really like the project in point 3, but again, I actually agree with Councillor Stamp that I would like further information on maintenance costs so that we can actually all get them and then we can all get them moved around so it's not putting an impost on the branch.
And I abstain as well, and my reason is I think that this is a valid piece of equipment that we can have. We do use them all the time, but we need to bring it back to the budget process because of what Councillor Lane has said. $100,000 now for a fixed camera is just out of the reach to supply to our area. They have gone up dramatically. I think the first lot that I ordered was $35,000. So that's the costs of facilities and infrastructure that is happening now. So, ladies, that has been carried. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. And does anybody have any general business for the finance manager? Do you have any for us? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, councillors, for that debate. We now move on to item 5.8, the CEO performance agreement. Yes, Mayor Power?
Yeah, as chair, I asked the CEO if he could be present.
Yes.
If agreed, he could give us a bit of a rundown on the last 12 months.
So what I've been told, Mayor Powell, is that the CEO will be doing a presentation first, then we will go into confidential and you'll take over. So is that correct, Darren?
I'm in your hands, Madam Chair.
So I believe you're doing a presentation to
Ready
us
to go.
first before we go into confidential. Thank you. Oh, here we go. Behind us is a presentation.
So, thank you, committee, for the opportunity. I understand you've had a long morning already, but there's a hard copy coming around, and I'll race through it reasonably quickly. I think it's important, though, to just pause briefly in an annual cycle of decisions of council and just take stock of where we're at, and that's the purpose of this presentation, to provide some more strategic context for what the organisation has been doing and provide the opportunity to talk about it. When you employed me, there was a few things you asked to do. First of all was to come in and take a look at the organisation and address a range of issues. You talked about deliverability issues. You talked about the approach to the interface between council and the organisation. There was a few risks associated. There's some siloing and a range of issues, if you like, that the council had expressed some concern with. I undertook to do that review, have had a number of early actions, and then set about taking the time to look at some longer term plans, and we'll talk about some of those things which are coming forward for the council. In terms of early actions, one of the crucial things up front was a safety reset. There was a range of quite significant safety risks that the organisation was dealing with, and we needed to significantly upgrade our workplace health and safety activities, which has been done and will continue to be done. It's an ongoing and evolving process. I'm happy to report that we have passed the last 2 safety audits, last year's and this year's. So we've also passed the most recent safety audit. Very important, given the obligations that the council officers and council laws has around safety. IT audit and uplift, that was a important piece of work which will become evident later. Rectification of policy risk, LIP is an example of that, where there was some policy risk associated with LIP, and that's been rectified. The creation of a city solicitor role, once again, there's been a lot of use of the city solicitor for a range of activities, and we continue to reduce the risks, legal risks for council through that process. Creation of program control, that is around the EPMO, being able to make sure that when we ask the organisation to do something, we understand what it is it's to do, and we can manage and monitor those things and report back to council. So program control is an important element of managing a large organisation like this. And I put down there cultural authenticity also, which is, we say what we're going to do and then do what we said we were going to do, trying to make sure that we do those things in a very transparent manner. And if people aren't performing, in accordance with our code of conduct, then we address those issues as soon as possible. And you'll see that we are doing those things, on a monthly basis across the organisation, as we speak. All right, then there was longer term planning, then some integration of a range of activities, and then delivery, which is after all what we're all about here. In terms of that integration, there's 4 areas I want to briefly touch on today. Our strategic approach, our focus on delivery, our focus on customer centricity, and how we are trying to become an efficient organisation to be able to do those first 3 things. Now, in terms of those 4 areas of integration, you'll have seen in yesterday's committee meeting how focused we are on trying to understand our long-term financial position. The LGIP matters yesterday are an example of that, where we are trying to understand those things and present good information to council about what the realities are of our financial position, and then think of the strategic ways that we need to deal with those things. These are really important long-term issues that have to be addressed, by the council. Focused delivery, we'll talk about that soon, but the delivery outcomes have been very good over the past 12 months. Customer centricity, there's a range of reasons to do this. Obviously, we are here to serve the community, but also in being customer centric, we can find ways to be, able to improve customer satisfaction at a lower cost to the organisation, a win-win opportunity, and efficient organisation. We have tremendous cost pressure last year, and we'll do so again this year, and it's a necessity for us, which to some extent requires an investment, but is a necessary thing over the longer term. Now, just some examples of the strategic approach. We have every year we talk to the organisation about what's important for the year. We have this approach to look forwards for 12 to 18 months, and then think about those things which we need to achieve to get to a position in that 12 to 18 months. It's a backcasting approach. In an overriding sense, what I wanted the organisation to do is to be in a position where it is performing as well as it possibly can, at this point of time, ahead of, a council election, to prepare for the election period and prepare for a new council, which will undoubtedly put more, expectation of the organisation to deliver. In terms of being able to understand the city, you know, what you'll see coming forward is a thing called a network plan. So, you know, at the moment, you just saw the NetServe plan for water yesterday. You can understand what the overall network plan is for water infrastructure and be able to plan for it off into the future. We'll be able to do the same thing for community sport and parks, because we will understand our network, understand where people live. Those colour codings are how long it takes for individual residents to drive to those pieces of sporting infrastructure, in this case baseball and softball fields. But for across a whole range of infrastructure that council will have this ability to understand and plan in a network sense. And that allows council to decide on what level of service, whether it's a 5 and 10 and 15 minute radius or a longer radius, what sort of level of service you will, you know, offer the community, and then what the costs are associated with providing that infrastructure to meet that level of service. This network plan will come to you over the next couple of months, and it is evolving GIS-based capability, which allows you to make better strategic decisions. Logan Plan, can't emphasise enough how important this is. We need to build an efficient city. We won't be able to afford to fund and operate an inefficient city, and being able to, you know, make sure that it happens on the ground starts with, you know, your Logan planning scheme. Also relatively well in hand. And then how you implement, you know, the rest of those activities. What I hope to talk to the organisation talks to the council about at the setting the scene is around how we consolidate, you know, some of these big strategic ideas into strategies which we can talk to the community and the organisation with. We've got 43 strategies at the moment. Very difficult to be across all of those and read all of those and use all of those. What you need to do is be able to talk in sort of 5 big areas and articulate that to the community and what it means for them, you know, on a daily basis, but also in the longer term. And we'll come back and talk to those, you know, in the coming months. Just wanted to pick out one of the examples in terms of sustainability, for example. More than 12 months ago, we identified the issue of the future availability of offsets for our carbon emissions. You know, our carbon neutrality is driven in part by, you know, purchasing offsets which we expect to become more and more expensive. And so brought to council, you know, an alternative pathway where we could reduce and in fact even potentially eliminate the reliance on offset purchases to become carbon neutral. And so this strategic approach where we are foreseeing off into the future a problem and finding, you know, strategies to overcome those problems is where we want to get to as a council and an organisation. We can address quite difficult issues if we have enough time to plan and prepare for them, both prepare ourselves and the community. And so ultimately we find ourselves sitting on the same side of the table as the council, dealing with big issues that the community and the city faces. So that's our objective, and this is an example where we think we are being successful. Back on this picture again, you've seen these images. Don't underestimate how important this sort of thing is, which was also a win during the year. And credit to the mayor and the council for advocating, you know, for this and achieving a commitment. We need to land it on the ground, and we'll all be comfortable when it's shovels in the ground. But this sort of infrastructure, this catalytic infrastructure, this strategic infrastructure is very important as Logan creates its own identity and creates its, you know, if you like, those internal drivers that elevate the city rather than relying as a dormitory suburb of other localities. Also very important is to pack around it legacy ideas. So it's not just the kit that you need to think about, but it's also how you use the kit and the legacy roadmap's already in place. And we've had requests from other councils to share the thinking behind the legacy roadmaps. Because it's already been identified as a quality piece of work. So congratulations to the council for identifying and bringing that on so quickly. I've also got in the pack a whole range of things which the organisation's done, you know, which is just keeping businesses, you know, keeping the lights on whilst all that strategic work's going on. And I won't go through it all, but I just wanted to, you know, identify, for example, what the organisation does on a day-to-day basis. So, for example, we had complaints, of people going through the weighbridge. We took a look at of that particular issue, provided some training, and complaints, about staff at a weighbridge have reduced from 6 to 0.8 per month. So whilst all those other strategic things are going on, which are important, we've also tried to improve the day-to-day operations of the organisation. And this next couple of pages, which I'm now just going to skip through, takes you, provides a record, if you, I suppose, of what those changes were. We've just been talking about covert cameras. Here's another example where the illegal dumping campaign has reduced offenders by 30% over the last 12 months. So, the work that comes here, the proposals that come from the organisation to the council supports it, the work happens, it actually changes things on the ground. So 30% less, 30% more offenders are removing their waste, 5% reduction in offences, $215,000 in clean-up costs. So I just wanted to acknowledge that things work and things happen. So this focused delivery, so talking about focused delivery now, you heard Silvio earlier say we don't need any more work, and that's because, for example, the roads capital delivery is of $140 million was a 45% increase on the previous year. So in terms of uplift in delivery, that's an enormous increase on the previous year. So, the organisation is stepping up in its delivery for the community. And a few photos in here for the people who like the photos of the roads that are being built around the city. Also, significant new pieces of non-car infrastructure, which will be important, going forwards in a strategic sense. Improving our green modes of transport will be important, and that is going in place. But also acknowledging there's been some really big bits of kit being built as well. A new set of cells in the Logan Home Wastewater Treatment Plant, big infrastructure, and a new cell at Browns Plains, which is immediately adjacent where the MRF would be proposed to be built. So quite a lot of delivery going on across the organisation. There's also the Queens Road Animal Centre upgrade, so acknowledging not only an improvement to the service that we'll provide to the community through improved facilities which are cleaner, more hygienic, more easy to access, safer, but also a change in the way that branch works. And so this new centre has far more hot desking and far more mobility within the office than a traditional council office has. We don't have a desk for everybody in this location. And in fact, we're moving towards, in this administration, we are going to be moving towards at least 20% hot desking. So taking away desks from a significant proportion of people, just because of the fact of the way people are working now, we can sweat this asset more by changing how people are provided with work infrastructure. Also want to acknowledge, where things aren't going as well, they can be rectified, and this project, which had some time pressure on it, eventually was delivered on time and under budget. And so far under budget, in fact, we had to come back to council and ask where council would like to spend the leftover money. So a really good piece of work, a great opening, great to have an Olympian, on site to open the pool. So great success all around, and additional funds to do a wet play area as well. So great success in that piece of community infrastructure. And so in terms of summary of how was our performance in this space, so 102% delivered, so a little bit overspent, but that's not overspent in terms of a budget blowout. That's in terms of more was delivered. In fact, in terms of we got further through our particular long-term project contract. So really pleased with how that went in the roads and community infrastructure space. So great delivery all around. What's important though is we don't hurt people on the way. So in terms of delivery, we also have to deliver on a safe working environment. So if you look at those blue columns, we are improving our LTIFR, so our lost time injury frequency rate. For every hour we work, we are injuring less people. And there's two reasons why that is important. One is, we don't want to hurt people in the first place, but also every time you do, it costs you money. You have downtime, you have delay costs, and you have that person out of action. And so it's really pleasing to see that we've got a downward trend. That line, we're not going to go to zero. That will level out at some sort of minimal level, but we're already well below the industry benchmark, which is pleasing. But a lot of work has to happen to keep that going. And in terms of where we need to improve, this is the normal health, safety and welfare pyramid, where you want those numbers at the top to be lower, the injuries to be lower, which they are. So we are injuring less people than we did last year and the year before. But what we haven't done is do enough of the bottom pieces, which are the inspections and the near misses identification. So we need to do better at identifying near misses, and that's a piece of work that we will have going forwards in making sure that we do identify hazards before they become an actual injury. How are we going to make sure we deliver next year and the year after and the year after that? Well, we have a good pipeline of work. And you can see the size of the pipeline of work, which is in detail design, for example, nearly $500 million worth of work in detail design, ready for when we do have funding available in the roads side. And similarly in the sport and community infrastructure, you can see it's more in project development, but it's coming through a better pipeline of work ready to go into pre-construction when we get a grant, when we have funding available. So that's how we're going to ensure that we do deliver off into the future as well. This customer centricity is also something dear to our heart. 250,000 calls received from the call centre. So quite a high volume of calls that come in. Millions of library books borrowed, lots of inquiries, nearly 7,000 requests for a development assessment. So really sort of slightly perplexing where we think that times are difficult, but the DAs are quite high and still up, and so a lot of strain on the organisation in those particular areas. So quite a lot of services are being delivered on a daily basis. 24,500 potholes, fixed across the network. 23,500 vaccinations. So once again, letting you see the breadth of the things that the organisation has to deal with. The council, you guys included, have to deliver on an annual basis. 15,500 plants planted along the waterways and quite difficult to get to places. So a lot of delivery by the council. And once again, to try to improve, we do these things called quarterly reports. This is the last quarterly report. So the ELT is asking the organisation to come and provide ELT with an assessment of how it's performed in the last quarter. And we do that because we want to not wait till the end of the year and see something has happened poorly. We want to see something, we want to find issues in each quarter and where we need to course correct so we can fix something early and have an improvement before the end of the year. So these quarterly reports and a lot of good data is now coming to ELT to work with on a quarterly basis. So they are working well. Here's an example of this in action. So we were looking at the data around missed bins in the first quarter of this year. There was 800 to 900 missed bins every month. We asked why that was. We had to think about how that could be improved. We're back to the contractor. There was some discussions held with the contractor, and then the following quarter, we're down to the 400 to 500 missed bins. That's like 400 people who aren't unhappy every month, just as a result of seeing some data, having a conversation with the contractor, and finding ways to improve. So it's real data and real improvement for the customer because we're trying to have this customer-centric approach. Another example is in RCM, where RCM were taking direct calls from customers around customer service requests. There was a piece of work done between the call centre and RCM, where the call centre is taking these calls, addressing it in a different way. What we found is repeat calls to come back and say, where's my service request, went from 8.13% down to 2.9%. So there's a significant chunk of people who haven't had to call back and find out where their service request is. Because we have this customer focus, we've dropped by 2/3 unhappy customers calling back to find out where their service request is. So this customer focus not only helps the customer, but it also reduces, in RCM, 2 officers down to 1 officer dealing with these repeat calls. So once again, the reason why we do customer centricity is because it's good for the customer, the ratepayer, and it's good for the organisation. Here's another example. On the left is how we used to identify and manage cemetery plots, highlighted on a piece of paper, which introduced too much uncertainty and opportunity for error. In moving from that to a digital system, the cemeteries group realised that there's a lot of really good digital data suddenly available, and then made that available to the public as well. So not only is there improved accuracy about where we're putting people, there's also the ability for those left behind to be able to find exactly where they are and be led with an app right the way to the gravesite. And I know Councillor Lane has already tested this out, and we continue to improve it. But here's an example of customer centricity in action, where we've got data, we've been able to use it to provide a better outcome and a better operational benefit for the organisation. We'll continue to try and find those in the coming years. And lastly, in terms of this enhanced customer service, better communications. I think we're getting better with our communications to the community in terms of roadworks or stormwater or other projects which are coming forwards. Still have a ways to go, but much better language, and credit to the roads team in particular, using much better language in how we talk about projects and how we talk about impacts on the customers and what they can expect and when they can expect it. So this is the sort of, I suppose, evolution of the organisation which will continue as we continue to focus on customer centricity. Also, pointing out that councillors are also the organisation's customers, and we are, doing our best to make sure we are improving on the outcomes, in terms of inductions compared to last quadrennium, and preparation for and activities post the next election. The organisation is committed to, as I said earlier, sitting on the same side as the table of councillors and making sure we are working, as best we can for the community. Now, to do all that, we need to be an efficient organisation. If you look at, just for example, our operations and maintenance budget, we think there's probably a $2 million gap in terms of, where our current budget is and where the forecast costs are going to be in 23-24. And that sort of forecast gap increases over time, and that's just for that RCM maintenance budget. Difficult conditions ahead for us. So there's 2 things we need to do. One is to try and expand our revenue base, and the other is to try and reduce our costs. The main areas around cost reduction is digital, going digital, is reducing our cost to serve as much as possible, not having humans involved in the transaction wherever possible and wherever suitable, because our cost to serve goes down to almost a zero marginal cost to serve compared to if you are face to face. So finding those cost reductions very important, and at the same time making a proper service review process and using this value for money language across all of the organisation. That's been our focus for the last 12 months. Is it value for money? How do we get better value for money? And those things, the examples I've already given are examples of those things, such as in the cemeteries. Expanding the revenue side, 94% of rateable properties are residential. We have been in the past a dormitory suburb for other economic centres in southeast Queensland, Brisbane and the Gold Coast in particular. And we need to try to expand our economy, restructure our economy so that we do have a lot more jobs for locals, and in doing so have commercial and industrial here in the city, which also create a broader rate base for the city to use. How do we do those things? Planning schemes, incentives, investment in infrastructure, and an ambitious economic development strategy is the pathway forward there, all ahead of us. Just in terms of the organisation, just wanted to, highlight our appreciation for how the council has supported the organisation in its restructure. New foundations was delivered 6 months ahead of schedule and $400,000 under budget. A really good outcome there, setting the organisation up for success. We haven't quite finished, tweaking the organisation, but that big foundational piece was also done in the past 12 months. So acknowledging that we are changing the organisation, we are transforming. We've begun, but we're not yet done on the organisational transformation journey that we're on, and been really pleased how committed the ELT is to that. Things like the legal services branch, really low times now because we've got a city solicitor sitting in the seat that can give quite fast advice, can triage quite quickly. So we're down to fractions of a day in some cases for responses rather than out to panels. And the EPMO will become, once we've got through this difficult process of trying to set a digital transformation program in place, continue to work on ensuring the organisation is delivering that program control to ensure we've got benefits being delivered for all of our work. I'm not going to go through this, it's in the pack, but this is the sort of thing we're expecting from digital transformation. But at the same time, once again, having to keep the lights on. So we've never been more under attack in terms of our IT infrastructure. 600 daily attempts to gain access to our internal network. 285 million attempts from high-risk countries to connect to our network over the past 12 months. So the investment the council has made in cybersecurity, critically important, and the sorts of keeping the lights on, which doesn't normally get seen, I suppose, which is why I'm highlighting it here, that there's a lot going on in the background to try and keep an organisation running. This service review, you've seen this. So this is the organisation committing to reviewing all its services across the coming years, and really look forward to that process, difficult though it may be. And just to acknowledge that this interplay between services and what is the cost to serve and what is value for money will be crucial over the coming years as we are squeezed where our costs are going up, for example, like last year. Costs going up 10% on average across the organisation and only 5% rate rises. So, and a 5% efficiency dividend already built into the budget. Rate reform was commenced last year and probably will need to continue. Like I say, this quarterly reporting program does create benefits, and we'll continue to report on those as we do every quarter. And we are just going to have to be much high use of digital and AI, such as the roads condition surveys, which are being deployed in conjunction with UQ to try to reduce our costs of operations. Now, just in finalising it, I just wanted to throw this up. So this is on a wall within council where, for me, this is evidence of good corporate culture and the development of good corporate culture where people are so proud of what they're achieving, they write it up on the wall and keep track of it. So if you're looking for signs of the organisation wanting to improve and seeing how important it is, it's this sort of thing where people are taking pride in their work, finding out what they're achieving, and writing on the wall and celebrating it at a morning tea or in some other way. So I like to see those sorts of things where staff are tracking their own achievements because it's a good sign for the organisation. So in terms of the last 12 months, on that basis, I think the organisation is delivering on the whole. Plenty of things to improve. As I say, we've started transformation, but we're not yet done. And I'm really looking forward to the coming years as we work on some of these big strategic issues, because they are crucial to the success of the city over the longer term, and will reflect on all of us in 100 years' time as to how well we do it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate the time that you've taken to put into that presentation and present it here today. Councillors, this item has got a confidential attachment to it. However, it is a public report. Does any councillors wish to move this into a confidential session? No? Thank you. Thank you. Mr Mayor, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. As indicated by the CEO, it's been a very productive year, and the CEO's performance has been very productive, and there's been a lot of positive outcomes, certainly within what are confines of what the CEO has to do. Obviously, there's outside influences that are causing issues, particularly high inflation costs and other issues. But within what the CEO has been able to control, he's done a very good job, as indicated by the performance review. And I think I'd be prepared to move the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. But before we move the report, is there any further questions from any other councillors at all? Councillor Raven.
Not a question, just a very brief comment. That is a great report that talks about the achievements the organisation have done with your leadership. But it actually undersells the hard work you do, because there's a whole bunch of things here that aren't achievements because they're risk management, issue management, challenge overcome that you do on a daily and weekly basis that I know I and others really appreciate, because we see it and we know that it's not always easy and not always predictable, but it's also not in this report. So this report is probably this is amazing, but it's probably about 10% of the actual output that your office is doing and that you're encouraging the organisation to look to. So I just want to say thank you very much, keep up the great work, and I couldn't be happier.
Thank you, Councillor Raven. I too would just like to say that, Darren, you always make yourself available for the councillors and at any time of the day, and you help us through any processes that we need to address as well. Mr Mayor.
Yeah, just with the report, this is the second time I've seen the report, and it was my recommendation to the CEO that he produces this report to this committee, because when you reflect on it, many of the councillors are looking at this thing or that thing, but when you collectively look at everything that is happening, because we certainly don't celebrate success here, we just move on to the next problem. And when you see a combination of everything in the report, you realise that the council's achieved a lot under the guidance of the CEO. It's working very well.
Thank you. Councillor Kerensky, I saw that you had some movement there. Did you want to speak at all?
I just wanted to second the report after the Mayor had moved it. I'm very proud of what the CEO has achieved for council, and I look forward to seeing what the next year holds.
Thank you. But before we do that, I believe we have to just table the PowerPoint presentation that Darren has presented us here today. So could I get a move of that? Councillor Power has moved it. Councillor Hall has seconded. All in favour, please, for the presentation. That has been carried. Thank you. I'll just bring up the motion now that Mr Mayor has said that he will move, and then Councillor Kerensky will second. I'll just wait for the girls to catch up. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. Thank you so much, Mr CEO. Before we move on, Kim is the Director of People and Engagement. Do you have any general business for us today?
I do have one quick item. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to introduce councillors to Renee Smith. Renee joined as our Corporate Communications Manager 3.5 weeks ago. Renee will be looking after the functions that sit within the corporate communication area of marketing, communications, engagement, media. And she's had a busy time these last few weeks just meeting her own team. We've started introductions on a one-on-one basis, and many of you will have those appointments in your diary now. But I did want to introduce Renee today before she brings a briefing meeting report to you tomorrow. Renee's had a strong career in media, both as a journalist and in corporate communications, and I'm really looking forward to her having a long and fruitful career at Logan. So welcome, Renee. Thank you.
Go ahead, Renee.
Thank you, and councillors, I look forward to meeting those of you who I haven't had the opportunity to meet with yet, and thank you for the warm welcome to those who I have had the opportunity to meet with.
Thank you. Sorry I missed you at 1 o'clock. I'm sure Kwong will reschedule. Thank you, ladies. Councillors, before we move on, I've been notified that the previous report, the LIP Corp 5.7, was actually, because there were so many that abstained, it actually went to a hung vote of 6-6. So it's been given back to the chair to decide on that, and due to the fact that I said that it should go to a budget, I have voted in for that particular report and motion, and therefore it has been carried as the not approved. So I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry for the confusion. eScribe didn't quite pick that up, so it was a hung vote at 6-6. It come back to me as the chair, and I've decided to go for a 4. So sorry about that. Thank you very much. Now we'll move back on. Councillor Bradley had left the meeting. That's what we were having a bit of a discussion about. So it was 6-6. So anybody in an abstained vote always goes in the negative. So therefore it come back to a hung vote, and the officers have advised me that I had to do the ruling vote. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. We'll move right on. I think we're up to the last report after jumping around everywhere today, and that is item 5.10, the annual report, the 2022-2023. I believe Danielle's going to enter into discussions for us today. Please commence when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, councillors. I'm here to present the report that covers the 2022-23 annual report, which is the second report that we prepared in response to the delivery of Council's Corporate Plan 2021 through to 2026. The Local Government Act 2009 requires that a council prepares an annual report as part of our financial accountability documents. And the Local Government Regulation from 2012 requires that we develop and adopt an annual report within 1 month from the day that the Auditor General provided the audit report to us. It was received on the 22nd of September 2023. The report overall was project managed by the Enterprise Portfolio Management Office, whilst Council's Corporate Communications Branch was a major supplier of narrative content for the report. Council's executive, management and teams were also involved in the report's development through the submission of information and the review of the final content. All performance-related content detailed in the report was designed around the priorities of the Corporate Plan 2021 to 2026, with the information coming from various sources. The report demonstrates an accountable and transparent record of Council's operation in delivery of services for Logan community and supports the local government principles of transparent and effective processes and decision-making in the public interest, sustainable development and management of assets and infrastructure and delivery of effective services, democratic representation, social inclusion and meaningful community engagement, good governance of and by local government, and also ethical and legal behaviour of councillors, local government employees and councillor advisors. To support access and inclusion, we will provide the report as a plain text document in accordance with Council's previous decisions, minute number 182 from 2019. The financial statements contained within the report will be published to Council's website as a standalone document as well. The report's content has been reviewed to meet English grade 6 reading level and standards wherever possible. Sorry, grade 9, I do apologise. Reading level and standards wherever possible. Following the adoption of the report, we'll create a graphic version and we will produce that for public consumption both on the website as well as in the form of printed copies at council administration centres and in the libraries. The report demonstrates how council operates in an accountable, effective, efficient and sustainable manner. We provide a snapshot of council's achievements and highlights our success and challenges in delivering services to the local Logan community for the 2022 and 23 financial year. We present this for adoption by council in accordance with our legislative requirements.
Thank you very much. Councillors, is there any questions? No? I believe that we need to table the attachment that was distributed to councillors on the 10th of October in relation to this item. Could I get a mover for this motion for the attachment? Councillor Raven has moved it. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Hall. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. That has been carried. And then we'll put the motion up on the board. This is that the Logan City Council 2022-23 annual report be adopted. Could I get a mover, please? Councillor Mayor Power has, Councillor Hall has seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That has been carried unanimously. That's how you do a report. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
But before you go, I understand that you're the Acting Enterprise Portfolio Management Office Manager. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
Do you have any general business for us?
No, the EPMO and I don't have any at this point. Thank you.
Councillors, is there any general business? No? Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
Before we go, councillors, does anybody have any general business for Robert? Do you have any for us, Robert? Thank goodness for that. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's agenda for today. I declare the City Governance meeting of the 11th of October has concluded at 1:46 p.m. Thank you very much.